The stars looked different from this viewing port. Ambassador Alan Miller had seen the stars from Earth, from Mars, even from the edges of human space, but never like this. Here, in neutral space, with the massive alien ships floating nearby, the stars seemed colder somehow, more distant, less friendly. "They're here," said Captain Samantha Lee, her voice tight with controlled tension. "Arxian flagship just dropped out of FTL. That makes all 7 hegemony species present." Alan nodded, straightening his formal blue uniform. "How do I look?" "Like a man about to meet aliens who control half the galaxy," Samantha replied with a small smile. "Nervous? Wouldn't you be?" Alan brushed invisible dust from his sleeve. "First official diplomatic contact with the Galactic hegemony. 7. Advanced alien species that could wipe us out without breaking a sweat." Samantha's smile faded. "We've held our own for 300 years of space exploration. We're not helpless. Earth fleet has 50 warships. Intelligence says the hegemony has thousands." Alan sighed. "But you're right. We stand tall. We represent humanity." The USS Defender, pride of the Earth fleet, was the chosen site for this historic meeting. A neutral location had been impossible to agree upon. The hegemony insisted that humans come to their capital world, while Earth demanded the meeting take place on human territory. The compromise, Earth's flagship, stationed in empty space between star systems. "Ambassador," called a young officer from the doorway. "They're ready to come aboard." Alan took a deep breath. "Let's make history." The Arxian High Chancellor was tall, nearly 8 feet of blue-gray skin stretched over a thin frame. 4 arms moved in graceful patterns as Zixtara spoke, translators converting the musical clicks and whistles into English. "We greet the human delegation," the alien said, compound eyes blinking in sequence. "The Galactic hegemony acknowledges your presence in this sector." Around the large meeting table sat representatives of all 7 hegemony species: the insectoid Vex, the gaseous Nubulans in their containment suits, the reptilian Saurites, the crystalline Quartz, the fungal Myconids, and the aquatic Hydrons in their floating water tanks. All alien, all powerful, all looking at the humans, with expressions that needed no translation: superiority. Alan stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth and all human colonies, we thank the hegemony for this meeting. We look forward to peaceful relations between our peoples." Zixtara made a gesture that the translator interpreted as amusement. "Peace is always preferable. The hegemony has brought peace to thousands of worlds." "We understand the hegemony controls significant territory," Alan replied carefully. "Humanity respects your borders. We simply ask that you respect ours as well." The Arxian's upper limbs twitched. "Respect is earned, human. Your species is young, barely out of your gravity well. The hegemony has ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Admiral Susan Wright, standing behind Alan, shifted her weight. Her hand rested near her sidearm, a gesture not missed by the aliens. "Young we may be," Alan said, "but we have established 17 colonies across 8 star systems. We've developed our own FTL drive. We've built ships that can—" "Primitive technology," interrupted the Saurite representative, scales flashing red and gold. "Your ships are slow. Your weapons are weak. Your defenses are laughable." Alan kept his face neutral, though he felt heat rising in his cheeks. "We did not come here to compare technological achievements, but to establish diplomatic relations." "Diplomacy," said Zixtara, the word somehow sounding like an insult from the translator. "Yes, the hegemony is always diplomatic, always fair." The meeting room's atmosphere grew tense as Zixtara stood, towering over the seated humans. "Here are our diplomatic terms. Earth and all human colonies will submit to hegemony rule. Your resources will be managed by hegemony overseers. Your military will be disbanded. Your technology will be evaluated for any useful innovations, though we expect to find none. Your people will be granted protectorate status, which is generous, considering your limited development." Alan blinked, momentarily stunned by the directness of the demands. "Those aren't terms for diplomatic relations. That's a demand for surrender." "It is the way of the galaxy," said the Nubulon representative, voice hissing through its suit's speakers. The strong protect the weak. The advanced guide the primitive. The hegemony brings order. Humanity does not need guidance, Alan replied, keeping his voice steady. We have managed our own affairs quite well. The Arxian made that gesture of amusement again. For how long? Your star charts show you've already encountered the borders of Quillian space in the Tau Ceti system. The Quillians are not part of the hegemony. They are aggressive. How will your 17 colonies and 50 warships fare against them? Susan stepped forward. Are you threatening us or offering protection? Both, said Zixtara. The galaxy is dangerous for young species. The hegemony offers stability. Alan exchanged glances with Susan. They had discussed this possibility, that the first contact might be less about diplomacy and more about conquest. We need time to consider your offer, Alan said carefully. Our government will want to review these terms. Of course, Zixtara said smoothly. The hegemony is reasonable. You have 30 Earth days to accept our generous proposal. And if we decline? Susan asked, though she already knew the answer. The Arxians' 4 hands came together in a complex pattern. In 10,000 years, no species has declined. Those who considered it no longer exist. The meeting ended shortly after, with promises of further communication. As the alien delegation prepared to return to their ships, Zixtara approached Alan privately. Your species is interesting, Ambassador Miller, the alien said. Most are afraid when they first meet the hegemony. Your people show little fear. We're cautious, Alan replied. Not afraid. You should be. Zixtara leaned closer. I have personally overseen the integration of 11 species into the hegemony. Some required convincing. None required more than a single battle. Our fleets have never known defeat. With that, the alien delegation departed, leaving the humans alone on their ship, the massive hegemony vessels looming outside the viewports. They're going to attack no matter what we say, Susan said once they were alone in the secure briefing room. This wasn't diplomacy, it was an ultimatum. Alan nodded grimly. 30 days to surrender or be destroyed. Classic Imperial tactics. We need to warn Earth, said Captain Lee. Get our colonies on high alert. Susan pulled up star charts on the room's main display. Even if we call in every ship, establish defensive positions around our core worlds. We're outnumbered. Their technology is more advanced. Conventional defense won't work. So we surrender? Alan asked, though he already knew Susan's answer. The Admiral's eyes hardened. We're humans. We don't surrender to bullies, no matter how big they are. They've never lost a battle, Captain Lee reminded her. Their own words. Susan's lips curved into a dangerous smile. Then they've never fought humans before. She turned to the star chart, fingers tracing potential movement patterns. We won't just defend, we'll take the fight to them. That's insane, Alan said, but he found himself leaning forward, intrigued despite himself. What are you thinking? They expect us to cower behind our defenses, to fight conventionally, Susan explained, eyes alight with fierce determination. So we do the opposite. We hit them where they don't expect, using tactics they've never seen. We'd need intelligence on their fleet movements, their command structure, Captain Lee said, already running calculations. And we'd need every advantage we can get, Susan added. Our ships might be less advanced, but our crews. She smiled. I've studied xenobiology reports. These hegemony species all evolved on low-gravity worlds. Weaker muscles, slower reflexes. Alan nodded slowly, beginning to understand. They've conquered thousands of worlds, but what if those worlds were all home to species like them? What if they've never faced anyone like us before? Exactly, Susan said. We're spacefaring predators from a high-gravity death world. She looked at the images of the alien ships outside. And we're about to teach the hegemony why human is a word they should fear. She tapped commands into the console, sending encrypted orders to the waiting human ships. They gave us 30 days to surrender. We'll use that time to prepare a response they'll never forget. Alan looked out at the stars again, no longer seeing them as cold or distant. Now they seemed like countless points of light waiting for humanity to claim its place among them. The hegemony thinks this is the beginning of our end, he said quietly. But really, it's the end of their unchallenged rule. They have no idea what they've just started. Lieutenant Commander Eric Daniels hadn't slept in 36 hours. The room around him was littered with empty coffee cups and holographic displays showing hegemony ship movements. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but those eyes burned with intensity as he studied the patterns before him. "You need to rest," said Dr. Olivia Martinez as she entered the strategy room aboard the USS Defender. The xenobiologist carried her own stack of data pads, her lab coat wrinkled from long hours. "Can't rest," Eric mumbled, not looking up. 28 days until their deadline. Need to find their weakness. Olivia set a fresh coffee beside him. "Found anything?" Eric finally looked up, running a hand through his disheveled brown hair. "Actually, yes. I think I have." He waved her over to the main display. "Look at these battle recordings." The screen showed footage recovered from the memory banks of destroyed ships from various species that had fought the hegemony over the centuries. Intelligence teams had been working non-stop to decode and analyze this data since first contact. "See these formations?" Eric pointed to the perfect geometric patterns of hegemony ships. Every battle, same basic tactics. They advance in standard formations. They focus fire on command vessels. They rotate fresh ships to the front in precise intervals. "They're predictable," Olivia said, understanding dawning on her face. "Exactly." Eric's tired face lit up with excitement. They've won every battle for 10,000 years. Why change what works? But that's made them rigid, inflexible. He pulled up another display showing Earth Fleet training exercises. "Our ships, on the other hand, we train for chaos. Our captains have authority to improvise. We practice fighting in asteroid fields, nebulas, planetary rings. We drill for situations where command is cut off and ships must act independently." "So you're saying we're unpredictable?" Olivia said, nodding slowly. "I'm saying they've never fought anyone who fights like us." Eric zoomed in on another recording. "Look at their response when this Mercian cruiser tried an unconventional maneuver. Total confusion in the hegemony ranks. They recovered quickly, but there was a moment of vulnerability." Olivia set down her data pads. "I may have found something similar in my research, their biology." She activated her own display, showing comparative physiological scans of hegemony species alongside human baselines. All 7 hegemony species evolved on worlds with gravity between 0.6 and 0.8 Earth standard. Their muscle density, bone structure, and reaction times reflect this. She pointed to various measurements. Even accounting for their technological advantages, the average human is physically stronger and faster than any hegemony soldier. Eric leaned forward, coffee forgotten. "Reaction times? Humans process visual stimuli and respond up to 2.3 times faster than the quickest hegemony species, the saurites." Olivia's eyes gleamed. "And there's more. Every hegemony world has weaker magnetic fields and lower background radiation than Earth. Their species never evolved the radiation resistance that humans naturally possess. So their ships would need more shielding against radiation," Eric mused, "making them heavier, less maneuverable, and their troops would be more vulnerable to radiation exposure." Olivia tapped another display. "Their environmental suits would need to be bulkier, more restrictive." The door to the strategy room slid open, and Admiral Wright entered with Ambassador Miller close behind. Both looked tired but determined. "Please tell me you have good news," Susan said without preamble. Eric straightened. "We believe we've identified key weaknesses in hegemony battle doctrine and physiology, Admiral." As they explained their findings, Susan's expression grew increasingly focused. When they finished, she nodded slowly. "So they're predictable and physically weaker," she summarized. "Good. But they still outnumber us, and their technology is superior." "Which is why we need to fight smart," Eric said. "Asymmetric warfare, hit-and-run tactics. Use environments that favor our physical advantages. We need more intelligence, Susan decided. Detailed scans of their ships, their weapons capabilities, their communication protocols. Alan, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. How do we get that without starting a war before we're ready? Susan's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We're going to steal it. Captain Frank Wilson checked his tactical gear, one final time as the stealth shuttle drifted silently toward the Hegemony scout ship. The small vessel had separated from the main fleet and was conducting routine scans of the nearby asteroid belt. The perfect target. Comms check, Frank whispered, though there was no need for quiet in the vacuum of space. Green across the board, replied Lieutenant Jane Baker from the pilot's seat. Hegemony sensors show no sign of detecting us. Their stealth technology is good, but ours is better. Frank nodded to the 6 other Special Forces operators in the shuttle's cramped compartment. Remember, non-lethal takedown if possible. We need prisoners for intel. What about their self-destruct systems? Asked Sergeant Paul Green, checking the charge on his stun rifle. Dr. Martinez's team identified the likely location based on captured technical data, Frank said. Neutralizing it is our first priority. After boarding, Jane guided the shuttle into position beneath the Hegemony vessel, matching its velocity perfectly. Ready for magnetic lock. Now. With barely a tremor, the shuttle attached itself to the scout ship's hull. Frank's team activated their magnetic boots and moved to the airlock. Cutting through in 3, 2, 1, the specialized laser sliced through the alien hull with surprising ease. Within moments, the team was inside, moving swiftly through the dimly lit corridors. Gravity's light, Paul observed as they moved. Less than half Earth normal. Frank nodded. Use it. Remember your training. They encountered the first Hegemony crew member, a Vex, at a junction. The insectoid alien barely had time to reach for an alarm before Frank crossed the distance in a single bound, covering twice the ground he would have in Earth gravity. His stun baton made contact, and the alien dropped. They're so fragile, Paul whispered, looking at the unconscious Vex. Different evolutionary pressures, Frank reminded him. Stay focused. They reached the bridge in under 2 minutes, encountering minimal resistance. The Hegemony crew, a mix of Arxians and Vex, seemed shocked by the speed of the human assault. The Arxian commander chittered in alarm when the humans burst onto the bridge. Impossible, the translator on Frank's suit rendered. How did you get aboard? Surprise, Frank said simply, stunning the alien before he could activate any alarms. As planned, Lieutenant Baker moved immediately to what intelligence had identified as the self-destruct controls, slapping a device onto the panel that would interrupt any activation sequence. She was just securing it when the Arxian commander, not fully incapacitated by the stun, lunged for a different control panel. You will not take this ship. Better to die with honor. The alien's hand hit the control before Paul could intervene. Lights flashed, and a countdown appeared on the main screen. Self-destruct activated, came the ship's automated voice. Detonation in 60 seconds. That's not the main self-destruct, Jane said, confused. It's something else. Frank grabbed the semi-conscious Arxian. How do we stop it? The alien's compound eyes reflected the flashing lights. You cannot. The core will overload. The Hegemony never surrenders its technology. Paul was already at the engineering console. It's a data wipe followed by a power core overload. Not designed to destroy the ship, just render it useless to enemies. Q, you stop it? Frank demanded. Paul's fingers flew over the alien controls, his neural implant translating the symbols in real time. Maybe. Their systems are advanced, but they didn't expect anyone to get this far. There's a backdoor in the emergency protocols. 30 seconds to core overload, announced the ship's computer. The rest of the team secured the bridge as Paul worked, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. 15 seconds to core overload. Almost, Paul muttered. Just need to. 10 seconds. Got it, Paul exclaimed as the countdown froze, then disappeared. The flashing lights ceased, and the normal bridge illumination returned. Frank released. a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Good work. The Arxian commander stared at them in disbelief. How? The failsafe is foolproof. No species has ever... First time for everything, Frank said, securing the alien's forearms with restraints. Humans are just full of surprises. While the team secured the remaining crew, Jane accessed the ship's data systems. Captain, I'm downloading their star charts, fleet positions, communication protocols. This is a goldmine. Frank nodded, looking around at the advanced but now captured hegemony vessel. Mission accomplished. Let's take our new ship home. As they prepared to pilot their prize back to the human fleet, Frank noticed the expressions on the faces of their prisoners. It wasn't just fear he saw there. It was confusion, disbelief. They've never encountered anything like us, he realized. They don't understand what they're dealing with. He smiled grimly as he contacted the USS Defender. Admiral Wright, this is Captain Wilson. The package is secure, plus a bonus. We're bringing home a fully operational hegemony scout ship. And some very surprised prisoners. Commander Nicole Harris watched the fleet of hegemony warships appear at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. One by one, 50 massive vessels dropped out of FTL, their sleek hulls gleaming in the light of the red dwarf star. From her position, on the bridge of the human cruiser Valiant, the enemy vessels looked like predators, beautiful, deadly, and confident. They're here, her tactical officer Ben Ward announced unnecessarily. 50 ships, just as intelligence predicted. Nicole nodded, her face calm despite the tension coiling in her stomach. Status of our visible forces? The 3 defense platforms around Proxima B are online and broadcasting at full power, Ben replied. Our 5 ships are in standard defensive formation. All systems nominal. 5 ships against 50. On paper, it looked like suicide. But paper didn't know about Admiral Wright's plan. Enemy fleet is forming up in their standard attack pattern, Ben continued. 3-tiered wedge formation, typical hegemony tactics. Nicole allowed herself a small smile. Predictable, just as Eric Daniels had said they would be. Her communications officer spoke up. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the hegemony fleet. Put it through. The main view screen flickered, showing an alien face, a saurite. Scales glinting with red and gold patterns that Nicole now knew indicated confidence, perhaps even arrogance. Human defenders, the alien began, translator converting the hissing speech to English. I am Fleet Commander Sekvar of the Galactic Hegemony. Your presence in this system violates hegemony territorial claims. Surrender your colony and withdraw your forces immediately. Nicole settled back in her command chair. This is Commander Harris of Earth Fleet. Proxima Centauri has been a human colony for 30 years. We reject your claim to this system. The saurite scales flashed in patterns that the translation software identified as amusement. Your rejection is noted. However, it changes nothing. You have 1 hour to evacuate your military vessels. Any ships remaining will be destroyed. And the colonists? Nicole asked, though she already knew the answer. They will be incorporated into the hegemony, as is our right and tradition, Sekvar replied. 1 hour, Commander. The hegemony is merciful, but only once. The transmission ended and Nicole turned to her crew. You all know the plan. Comms signal the other ships. We begin Phase 1 in 15 minutes. From his command deck, Sekvar watched the small human fleet with contempt. Only 5 ships to defend their colony? The hegemony intelligence reports had indicated the humans were prideful and stubborn, yet they had committed barely any forces to defend one of their oldest colonies. Perhaps they are not as foolish as we believed, he commented to his second-in-command. They must recognize the futility of resistance, or they have concentrated their fleet elsewhere, his subordinate suggested. Preparing for a counterattack? Sekvar dismissed the idea with a flick of his tail. Against the might of the hegemony? Impossible. They are a young species. They will learn as all others have. His tactical officer interrupted. Commander, the human vessels are moving. Sekvar turned his attention to the display. The 5 human ships had broken formation and were accelerating away from the planet. "They flee," he said, scales rippling, with satisfaction. "Typical. Begin pursuit. We will demonstrate the consequences of defiance." The hegemony fleet surged forward, maintaining their perfect formation as they pursued the smaller, faster human vessels. The humans led them away from the colony world toward a dense asteroid field that surrounded the outer reaches of the system. "They seek to hide among the asteroids," Sekvar observed. "A desperate tactic. Deploy squadrons 3 through 7 to encircle the asteroid field. They will have nowhere to escape." The human ships darted into the field, weaving between the massive rocks with surprising agility. The hegemony fleet approached more cautiously, their larger vessels less maneuverable in the confined space. "Maintain formation," Sekvar ordered. "Advance slowly. Use long-range weapons to flush them out." His tactical officer suddenly straightened, alarm evident in his posture. "Commander, we're detecting energy signatures throughout the asteroid field. Multiple sources." "What?" Sekvar demanded, leaning forward. "Show me." Before the display could update, a barrage of missiles erupted from behind several large asteroids, streaking toward the hegemony formation. Simultaneously, 15 human warships powered up from concealed positions, their engines having been dormant until now. "Ambush," Sekvar hissed. "Raise shields, return fire." From her position behind a large asteroid, Nicole watched the chaos unfold. The surprise was total. The hegemony ships scrambling to raise shields as missiles struck their hulls. Their perfect formation began to break apart as captains reacted independently to the unexpected threat. "All ships, execute attack pattern. Sierra," she ordered. "Target their command vessels first." The human ships darted from their hiding places, engines pushing them to accelerations that would have killed hegemony crews. The G-forces pressed Nicole back into her seat, but human physiology, evolved on a high-gravity world, could withstand pressures that would crush the lighter-boned aliens. "Targeting their flagship," Ben announced, face strained from the acceleration. "Missiles away." On the main display, Nicole watched as the human fleet swarmed around the larger hegemony vessels. What they lacked in size and firepower, they made up for in speed and maneuverability. The confined space of the asteroid field further hampered the hegemony's ability to bring their superior numbers to bear. "Status of boarding teams?" Nicole asked. "Major Garcia reports ready for deployment," her communications officer replied. "Target vessel identified. Approach vector calculated." Nicole nodded. "Give them the green light." Major Daniel Garcia felt the assault shuttle shudder as it detached from the cruiser Defiant. Around him, 20 Marines checked their weapons and armor one final time. Unlike the hegemony troops they would soon face, these soldiers were born on Earth, their bodies dense with muscle developed under the punishing gravity of humanity's homeworld. "Remember," Garcia told his team, "we hit them hard and fast. They've never faced boarders who can move like we can. Use that advantage." The shuttle pilot called back from the cockpit. "Approaching target vessel. They're still recovering from missile impacts. Shields are fluctuating." Garcia stared through the view screen at their target, a hegemony destroyer, its port side scarred from a missile hit. "Take us in through the damage. We'll make our own door if necessary." The shuttle accelerated toward the wounded alien ship, dodging defensive fire with jerky maneuvers that slammed the Marines against their restraints. No hegemony pilot could have executed such maneuvers. The G-forces would have rendered them unconscious. "Brace for impact," the pilot shouted. The shuttle crashed through the damaged section of hull, metal screaming against metal as it tore into the hegemony ship. Emergency force fields snapped into place around the breach, containing the atmosphere but not preventing the humans from disembarking. Garcia was first through the shuttle's hatch, assault rifle raised. 2 Arxian crew members stood frozen in shock at the sight of human boarders, something unprecedented in hegemony warfare. Garcia stunned them both before they could react. "Move out," he ordered. "Engine room and bridge as planned." The Marines split into 2 teams, racing through corridors designed for the taller, slimmer aliens. The lower gravity inside the hegemony vessel allowed the humans to move with startling speed, covering ground in bounding strides that would have been impossible on Earth. They encountered resistance at a security checkpoint. 6 Saurite soldiers with energy weapons. The aliens fired first, their shots precise but too slow. The humans were already moving, diving for cover or charging forward with a speed that seemed impossible to the hegemony troops. Sergeant Lisa Johnson took a glancing hit to her left arm, the energy weapon burning through her armor and into flesh. The pain was intense, but her training held. Rather than retreat, she charged forward, her wounded arm hanging useless at her side, the other raising her weapon. The Saurites had never seen anything like it. A wounded enemy continuing to attack. Rather than seek cover, their momentary hesitation was fatal. Lisa's shots dropped 2 of them while her teammates eliminated the others. "Johnson, you're hit," Garcia noted, seeing the blood dripping from her arm. Lisa gritted her teeth. "Still functional, sir," Garcia nodded, knowing better than to order one of his best soldiers to retreat. He applied a quick seal bandage to her wound. "Stay with me. We're heading for the bridge." They encountered more resistance as they fought their way deeper into the ship. But each encounter ended the same way. The hegemony troops, accustomed to enemies who fought like they did, were unprepared for the speed, strength, and sheer tenacity of the human Marines. When they finally breached the bridge, the Arxian captain stared at them in horror, especially at Sergeant Johnson, who stood blood-soaked but unbowed, her broken arm now supported by a makeshift sling, still fighting with her good arm. "What are you?" the alien captain whispered as Garcia approached. "We're humans," Garcia replied simply. "And your ship now belongs to us." Across the battlefield, the same scene repeated. 3 more hegemony vessels fell to boarding actions, their crews unprepared for close-quarters combat with creatures evolved on a high-gravity death world. Other Hege. Intelligence Officer Kevin Palmer leaned back from his console and rubbed his tired eyes. For the past 48 hours, he had been monitoring hegemony communications non-stop, tracking the aftermath of what humans now called the Battle of Proxima. The captured hegemony scout ship had provided encryption keys that allowed Earth's intelligence services to listen in on enemy transmissions, and what Kevin was hearing fascinated him. "You look like you need sleep," said Lieutenant Maria Chen, sliding a cup of coffee across the desk to him. "Anything interesting?" Kevin took the coffee gratefully. "Very interesting. Listen to this." He tapped a few keys and a translated hegemony message played through the speakers. "Warning to all outposts in Sector 47. Human military vessels may enter your space. Do not engage alone. Repeat, do not engage without fleet support. These creatures can continue fighting after sustaining injuries that would kill any civilized species. Some reports suggest they can regenerate lost limbs and survive exposure to hard vacuum for short periods." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Regenerate limbs? That's not true." "They're exaggerating what they saw," Kevin explained. Sergeant Johnson kept fighting with a broken arm and severe lacerations. The hegemony has never seen anything like that, so the story grows with each retelling. He scrolled through more decoded messages. "They're calling us Deathworlders now. It seems they categorize planets by habitability, and Earth would qualify as a Class 12 world in their system. Extremely hazardous by their standards." "Because of our gravity and radiation levels?" Kevin nodded. "And our atmospheric pressure? Bacteria, predator species, basically everything about Earth would kill a hegemony citizen without advanced protection. And we evolved there," Maria said with a growing smile. "No wonder they're scared." "They should be," Kevin replied, bringing up a new set of communications. "Look at these troop movement orders. The hegemony is mobilizing their main battle fleet, over 300 warships. They're planning to hit Earth directly, end the threat once and for all." Maria's smile faded. "Can we stop a force that size?" Kevin's expression turned grim. "Admiral, Wright is working on that. She's meeting with some interesting potential allies right now." Admiral Susan Wright studied the alien sitting across from her in the secure conference room. The Navali ambassador was small, barely 4 feet tall, with gray skin and large luminous eyes that blinked rarely. Though physically unimposing, The Novali were known throughout this sector for their technological prowess and their subjugation by the hegemony 3 centuries ago. You understand that meeting with me is treason against your hegemony, masters, Susan said bluntly. The Novali, who had introduced himself simply as Vel, inclined his head slightly. The concept of treason applies only when loyalty is freely given, Admiral. The Novali people did not choose to join the hegemony. We were conquered, as were the Meridians. He gestured to the other alien present, a tall, willowy being whose skin seemed to shift colors subtly as the light changed. We have monitored your battle at Proxima Centauri, Vel continued. It is the first defeat the hegemony has suffered in living memory. Such an opportunity may not come again. Susan leaned forward. What exactly are you offering? Information, the Meridian answered, her voice melodic. I am Tella, voice of the Meridian Resistance. My people have served as servants and spies within hegemony households for generations. We hear things, important things, such as the layout of their central defense grid, Vel added, the command codes for their automated defense platforms, the personal shields protecting their High Council. Susan tried not to show her surprise. This was far more than she had expected. And in exchange, freedom, Tella said simply. When the hegemony falls, or even if it merely retreats to deal with internal matters, many subjugated worlds will have a chance to reclaim their independence. You assume we can defeat them, Susan noted. They're gathering a fleet of over 300 ships to attack Earth. Vel's large eyes blinked slowly. Yes, and they are terrified, Admiral Wright. Your humans have become creatures of nightmare. To them, stories spread through hegemony space. Humans drinking acid, breathing fire, surviving in vacuum. Most of that isn't true, Susan pointed out. Truth matters less than perception, Tella replied. Fear makes them predictable. They will commit all their forces to ending the human threat quickly. They will follow their ancient battle doctrines, the same ones that have always brought them victory. Except against us, Susan said, beginning to understand. Vel nodded. Exactly. They cannot adapt quickly. They do not know how. Susan considered the proposal carefully. An alliance with subjugated species could provide critical intelligence, but dealing with multiple alien factions brought its own complications. I'll need to discuss this with Earth government, she finally said. But personally, I believe we can work together. As the meeting concluded and the aliens departed through separate exits, Ambassador Alan Miller emerged from an adjoining room where he had observed the proceedings. Risky, he commented. If the hegemony discovers their people are working with us, the reprisals would be severe. All war is risky, Susan replied. But this gives us options we didn't have before. Alan nodded toward the door. Do you trust them? Trust is a luxury, Susan said, but their self-interest aligns with ours. For now, that's enough. On the hegemony colony world of Garner 4, Chief Petty Officer Ryan Jackson huddled in the darkness of a maintenance tunnel. His flight suit was torn, his left leg wounded from a Saurite energy weapon, and his situation desperate. 3 days ago, his scout ship had been shot down during a reconnaissance mission. The 2 other crew members had died in the crash, but Ryan had survived, only to be captured by hegemony forces. They had questioned him for hours, their translator struggling with his accent. When he refused to provide anything beyond his name and rank, they had locked him in a cell designed for a much smaller alien species. The cramped space was their first mistake. They had underestimated human strength and determination. Ryan had waited until the night cycle, when the guard rotation changed, then broken the locking mechanism using a piece of metal pried from his bunk. Their second mistake had been assuming that a wounded prisoner couldn't pose a threat. Now he was on the move, navigating through the colony's underground systems using a stolen access terminal. The hegemony security forces were searching for him, but they moved in predictable patterns, checking the same areas repeatedly, rather than thinking like a hunted human would. Ryan paused at a junction to check his improvised map. The spaceport was 3 kilometers north but heavily guarded. He needed a distraction. The colony's power distribution node was closer, just half a kilometer east, If he could disable it, the resulting confusion might give him the chance he needed to steal a ship. Moving carefully through the tunnel, Ryan considered his options. Even if he reached the spaceport, most alien vessels would be configured for their physiology, not his. He would need to find something adaptable or simple enough to pilot without training. A sound from ahead made him freeze. Voices, the musical tones of Arxians, approached from around a bend in the tunnel. Ryan pressed himself into a small alcove, hoping the darkness would hide him. Two Arxian technicians rounded the corner, their glowing tools illuminating the passage. They were discussing recent events, their translator devices active, allowing Ryan to understand them. Third search. Of this sector, one was saying, it's pointless. The human is probably already dead from its injuries. You didn't see it during interrogation, the other replied, voice pitched higher in what Ryan recognized as fear. It showed no pain. Commander Terrell said humans can ignore injuries that would incapacitate any rational being. Superstitious. Nonsense, the first said dismissively. It's just an animal from a heavy gravity world. Tough, but not invincible. They were about to pass Ryan's hiding spot when a small maintenance drone scuttled past. Both Arxians turned to track it, their lights sweeping across the alcove. Ryan knew he'd been spotted when both aliens froze, their four eyes widening simultaneously. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Ryan lunged forward, using the higher gravity. He'd evolved in to propel himself faster than the Arxians could react. He disabled them quickly, careful not to cause permanent harm, and dragged them into the alcove. 10 minutes later, wearing an Arxian technician's coveralls over his flight suit and carrying their tools, Ryan walked openly toward the power distribution node. The disguise wouldn't fool anyone who looked closely, but in the dimly lit tunnels it might be enough. When he reached the node, he set to work quickly, using the stolen tools to access systems he barely understood. He didn't need to understand them perfectly. He just needed to create chaos. As alarms began to wail and the colony's lights flickered and died, Ryan slipped out of the facility and moved toward the spaceport through streets now filled with confused aliens. In the darkness, with emergency crews rushing to respond to the power failure, a limping figure attracted little attention. By the time power was restored 3 hours later, a small hegemony courier vessel was already leaving the atmosphere, its legitimate transponder codes preventing immediate pursuit. High Admiral Cathorn stood on the command deck of the hegemony flagship Eternal Dominion, surveying the massive fleet assembled around him. 300 warships, the largest battle group ever deployed in hegemony history, hung in space near Jupiter. The gas giant's swirling storm seemed an appropriate backdrop for the storm of destruction he was about to unleash. No sign of human fleet activity, reported his second-in-command. Their home system appears largely undefended. Cathorn's scales rippled with satisfaction. They have retreated to their homeworld hoping for mercy. They will receive none. The intelligence reports from Proxima Centauri had been disturbing, but Cathorn dismissed them as exaggerations. Yes, the humans had won a skirmish using surprise and unconventional tactics. Such tricks would not work twice. Open a broadcast channel, he ordered. All frequencies. Let them hear their doom approaching. When the channel was ready, Cathorn spoke clearly, his translator converting his words to human languages. People of Earth, I am High Admiral Cathorn of the Galactic Hegemony. Your resistance at Proxima Centauri was an insult to our 10,000 years of dominion. For this crime, your species will be subjugated, your military disbanded, your leaders executed. You have 1 hour to surrender before bombardment begins. He closed the channel, satisfied with his pronouncement. The humans would beg for mercy now. All species did, in the end. The minutes ticked by. No response came from Earth. They ignore us? Cathorn asked, irritated. His tactical officer suddenly straightened in alarm. Admiral, energy readings from Jupiter's moons. Before Cathorn could respond, massive energy beams lanced out from the Galilean moons. The supposedly undefended gas giant now revealed its secret. Each moon housed enormous railgun installations, hidden from long-range scans. Simultaneously, the space around Jupiter seemed to shimmer as hundreds of human vessels, deactivated their stealth systems, appearing where moments before sensors had detected nothing. "Ambush!" Cathorn roared. "Battle formations! Return fire!" But the perfect hegemony formations were already breaking as railgun projectiles tore through their ships at velocities approaching light speed. The human vessels, smaller but faster, swarmed through the hegemony fleet like angry insects, targeting command ships and communication relays. On all hegemony frequencies, a simple message played on repeat. "You should have run when you had the chance." Admiral Susan Wright watched from the bridge of the USS Defender as the battle unfolded. The weeks of preparation, building the railgun platforms, positioning the fleet, coordinating with their new allies, had paid off perfectly. "Status of boarding operations?" she asked. "Marines have successfully boarded 15 hegemony capital ships," her tactical officer reported. "Fighting is intense, but we're making progress." Susan nodded. The hegemony had never considered the possibility of boarding actions. It simply wasn't done in their form of warfare, but humans excelled at the unexpected. "Admiral," her communications officer called, "we've located the hegemony flagship. It's attempting to retreat." "Not today," Susan replied. "Intercept course, prepare my shuttle." High Admiral Cathorn could not comprehend what was happening. His perfect fleet was in chaos. Reports came in of human boarding parties cutting through hegemony defenses like they weren't there. His crew described scenes of terror, humans continuing to fight despite injuries that would kill any civilized being, moving with impossible speed in the ship's lower gravity. "Prepare for emergency jump," he ordered. "We must inform the High Council." An explosion rocked the flagship as a human cruiser rammed into its engine section. Alarms screamed as systems failed across the ship. "Admiral," gasped a junior officer. "Humans have breached the command deck." The doors to the bridge blasted inward. Through the smoke stepped a human female in battle armor, followed by more humans carrying weapons that Cathorn had never seen before. "Hi, Admiral Cathorn," said Admiral Wright. "I'm here to accept your surrender." 1 week later, in the grand meeting hall of the Hegemony High Council, representatives of all 7 ruling species gathered to sign the peace treaty. The humans had been merciful in victory, demanding only recognition of their sovereignty and the freedom of dozens of subjugated species. "How could we have known?" asked an Arxian counselor. "How could we have predicted you would be so different, so much more formidable?" Ambassador Alan Miller smiled and activated a recording, the first message ever sent by a human ship upon encountering a hegemony scout vessel, months before official first contact. The message played clearly. "We come in peace, but we do not fear war. Treat us as equals or run." "You were warned," Miller said simply. "Next time I suggest you listen."